to do the work and work in the tannery, and that was a very big, very viable, big business.
When did that close?
And my grandmother came from Canada as a very young girl at about 14 or 15 to work in one of the so-called hotels. Now, this tannery had many, kind of like maybe 100, a couple hundred men working there in the tannery.
Oh.
And they had to stay somewhere, and they had a couple of hotels in the town that where people stayed, and they had their board and room, and they got their meals there. And when they got through work, they came back to the hotel, and they had their room. And my grandmother came to wait on the tables and help cook in the kitchen and do cleaning and stuff like that. And she fell in love with one of the workmen who lived in Forest City. His name was John Brooks, and they married. And they married, and as the tannery began on its wane, at about the turn of the century, the tannery folded up, and hundreds of people left town, and it was there, and they had bought a house, and they had lived there all the rest of their lives.
And
my aunt,
my
grandmother, and her husband, Johnny Brooks, they had 3 children. My aunt, Harriet, and my uncle, which is my dad's brother, Harry, and my dad. And my dad was born in 1896. But my grandmother came from Canada, and her ancestry was from Scottish roots in Scotland. Ireland, Scotland, Scotland.
Yeah.
And so far as I know, I don't have any family history. My grandfather, Johnny Brooks, came from northern Maine, where his background was up in northern Maine, and some of the Brooks clan still resides in northern Maine. Some of whom I've met, but most of them I haven't. But I would say that my grandmother's ancestry was Scottish.
Okay.
Does that all make any sense to you?
And what about? Yeah. And what about your mother?
My mother, I don't know. My mother's family lived in Brookton, Maine, and I don't honestly know where her parents came from. I guess they were in Brookton, Maine, or let's say they were Mainers, put it that way. I don't know where they came from or anything kindly about their background at all, Caroline.
Oh, that's right.
Okay.
Okay.
I should, but I don't. Can you digest all of that?
Yeah. Yep. That's all great information. Thank you.
Do you need his wartime record?
Have you recorded it all, Caroline?
Sport record. Oh, and can you tell me about your involvement in the war?
The Army.
The Army.
Well, my involvement in the war after high school, I wanted to go to college, but I couldn't, and I knew I was going to get drafted. So I worked a couple of years after I graduated in 1947 from high school, and in the fall of 1950, I was drafted. And when you're drafted, it meant that every able-bodied man, every able-bodied young person that was fit to be a soldier were summoned for a physical test. And if he passed the physical test, he was given a number, and then he was expected under penalty of the law. It was a legal thing passed by the Congress that every able-bodied man between 18 and, I don't know, like 18 and 44 or something like that would be drafted into the military. And one day I got a notice in the mail from the United States government that said that I had been drafted, and I was ordered to report on November to report on November 7th, 1950, to go to a processing center at Fort Devens, Massachusetts, for induction into the United States Army. And I wasn't at all sad to get that letter. I was delighted to get that letter.
Why?
Because I was sick of Bath, Maine, and I was then working in the shipyard.
He didn't have any money.
And I was sick of working in the shipyard. Didn't see any future in the shipyard. And there was nothing in Bath, Maine for me except the shipyard. And I just, even at that young age of 18 and 19, whatever I was, no, I was older than that, I think 18, 19, 20. Yeah, it must have been around 19 to 20. I was glad to get the hell out of there, so to speak, and see some of the world and so forth. I'm glad to go to the war. And so I went willingly. I have pictures of the day. My mother and my father and my sister took me down to the bus station, and we kissed and hugged, and I had my little suitcase, and I went on the bus with about 45 other young men, most of whom I knew from Bath, Maine, high school days and stuff. And I went to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, and I was processed, and I went into the military, and I went down to Camp Edwards in Massachusetts. You know where Camp Edwards, Massachusetts is? It's down on the Cape.
Okay.
It's down at Falmouth. Down at Falmouth. And I was familiar with going down the Cape and across the Sagamore Bridge down to Cape Cod, and I spent a lot of weekends at Buzzards Bay and Craigville Beach and Buzzards Bay and you name it, down on the Cape. And ultimately, I went to California. But before that, where I went down to a leadership school at Fort Dix, New Jersey. And I went down there for 20 weeks. And I graduated from a leadership school. There were 114 on that particular class at the leadership school. And that was preparatory. You had to pass the leadership. If you were selected to go to officers training school, you had to first pass the leadership course. And it was a very, very rigorous and rugged time. A very rugged time. And you had to be in tip-top condition to graduate. And there were 114 of us started, and 61 finished. And I finished at the top of my class.
Wow.
And I graduated, and I have a diploma and so forth. Graduated from a leadership school, leader school. And I was going to go to officers candidate school. And I had orders cut to go to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, to go to officers candidate school. And I found out along the way that if I did that, I would have to be in the service for almost another 2 years before I could fulfill my requirement. And I had already been in the service over a year in the Army. And I would go to officer school, and I would be 2 more years, maybe even 3 more years. And that might be a total. It might end up being a total close to 4 years before I could be released from the military. And I didn't want to spend 4 years of my life, 3 or 4 years of my life. So I voluntarily opted out. I had that right. I voluntarily opted out of my opportunity to go to officers training school. And at that point, my group, my outfit, so to speak, they had gone to California, to San Francisco, California, prior to being sent overseas to go in the war, to the Korean War. And I asked permission to rejoin my outfit in California, and the permission was granted. And and the Army paid my way by train across country to San Francisco, and I rejoined my outfit, and I did various and sundry many training requirements out there, and I was down in the desert, in the Mojave Desert, training soldiers and so forth and so on, during the whole rest of my time in the military.
Hmm.
And I never did go overseas to fight in the war or dodge any bullets or anything. I was very lucky.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I was discharged in November of 1952. And I came back to Bath, Maine, and I again worked in the shipyard until the following September of 1953. Upon I had earned enough credits to be given the GI Bill of Rights, and that is the government would pay for my education.
Yep.
And I went to the University of Maine 4 years on the GI Bill, and I mentioned that way back when we were talking.
Right.
And I graduated in 1957, and I graduated from college 10 years to the day after I graduated from high school.
Wow.
You get all that story?
Yeah, I did. Thanks. Just last bit of information I need is how many years older are you than Aunt Joan?
I am 5 years.
Okay. Alrighty then, that's all the information that I
Do
need.
you know the year that he and Grammy
All
were
right.
married?
Oh, actually, there's one more thing I should probably know. What year were you and Grammy married?
Grammy and I were married in August of 1954.